Today we're continuing our False Prophet series, and we're on False Prophet number 006, which is Brenda Weltner. So I'm going to bring up her channel here so you can see. This is Brenda. You can see her in all her glory. And she's got about 2 years worth of videos dating back to 2017. It's no coincidence that it dates back to 2017. That's when she predicted the rapture would happen. Now, she's really sneaky. She's one of these calculative types. Remember, I said there are two kinds of false prophets. There are the kinds that just simply say, God told me this. You can't tell me any difference because I know God's voice and I don't fail in recognizing God's voice. I know God's voice. I would never think that some other voice was God's voice, so you can't tell me. I've been hearing God's voice for years, or I've been hearing it for months, or however long. But they will not listen to anyone question the authority of that voice who spoke to them. They don't even know if it's God or not. And especially if they're a false prophet, it can't be God. So here's Brenda, who's in the category like camping. We had this guy at camping before, and they're the calculative types. They will do this intricate number system to try to calculate everything out, or science, or whatever. She does that too. In fact, she doesn't exactly say the rapture is going to happen on this date. Instead, she layers it. So you have to kind of, dig through all her materials to see that this equals that equals that, and that equals that rapture date. Right? And so it's like the rapture equals this equals that equals that. That's the date for this, which means that, that. Oh, the rapture. Oh, that's what you're talking about. That's how she does it. So extremely deceptive. Extremely deceptive. And when I confronted her on it, she thought that she thanked me for the compliment, that she was being persecuted. That she was being persecuted. Yeah, right. But, okay. So, she's not being persecuted. She's being rebuked by a true messenger sent by the Lord himself to rebuke her and to call her to stop. And that's how she responded. All right, so let's go ahead and have a look. We're going to dig in right now and just see what we've got going on. Okay, so here's this. This is one of her videos. You can see Brenda Weltner down here, right? And so, we can go ahead, and it says here, the second timeline in Daniel, it says the Feast of the Trumpets, September 21st, 2017. Now you go, the Feast of the Trumpets, that's not in Revelation. No, it's not in Revelation. That's actually in the Old Testament. So she's pulling that out of the Old Testament. And so let's go ahead and have a look at what else we found here. Let's see. That's not useful. This right here, this is a better one. It's much more useful. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and play this so you can hear it from her own words that we are the 24 elders. We are the child. The child is the 24 elders after the child has been raptured to heaven. That's what she's going to explain. Okay. Oh my. Okay. So let's have a look. And that's supposed to take place before the trumpets. Okay, so let's go ahead and have a look.
I don't do all the 7 seals and then all the 7 trumpets and then all the 7 bowls. What we find is that these things are actually layered over each other, which gives us this kind of dimensionality. So what we're doing in the book of Revelation is we're tracing certain things back and forth through the book. In the last video, we talked about how the 24 elders represent believers who are priests and kings, and of course the 24 elders, they have golden crowns on their heads. They are in heaven's throne room, so they are priests and they are kings, and that's us. The 24 elders represent current, present-day believers who will be caught up to God. In Revelation 12, we learn that the child is caught up to God and to his throne. The man-child is Jesus. He's the one who rules all nations with a rod of iron. But the child is caught up to God and to his throne. So the child can be equated with the 24 elders. The child actually appears in the throne room of heaven as the mature version. How and when does the child get there? Or what are the circumstances surrounding the harpazo, or the catching up of the child? So we're going to take a look at Revelation 12 today, and we're going to continue our timeline. And remember, what we're doing here is actually working backward. We're working from things that we know, like when that the seals and the trumpets happen before the midpoint, they happen in conjunction with each other. We're just working backward because we know that before the seals can be opened, Jesus has to have the scroll. And before he has the scroll, the 24 elders have to be in the throne room. They're in the throne room for a reason, and we'll find that out in Revelation chapter 12. And that's something we're going to talk about on this video. All right, so what I've done here is write down the things that we know so far, and I've sort of consolidated them a little bit. This is the midpoint of the 7 years, okay? This is the 3.5 year mark, okay?
Okay, so you've seen enough right there to kind of get a gist for where she's heading with this, all right? And you've got the harpazo, as she directly says, which is the Greek word for, that's the one that Paul uses in Thessalonians, for being caught up in the air with Christ, right? Harpazo. And so she calls this taking up of the child, not the man-child, the child, which she says is us, we who are Christians who are alive at the time, that, so she already says that we are going to be alive at the time of the rapture. So she already says it's going to happen soon, very soon. This is going to happen in our lifetime. And that we'll be caught up, and the 24 elders represent us. Okay, all right. Never heard that before. Never heard anyone go that wild before with that. All right, so let's go ahead and try to see where she equates the feast, the festival of the trumpets, with the either with the trumpets being blown here, or with the harpazo, the taking up of the child. Okay. So I was going to show you this video here. It's not very long, 1 minute 27 seconds, but I don't want to poison your brain with all this garbage. All right, I just want you to see, these are the dates she has set. You can see this on her website, Brenda Weltner, okay? And this is published in 2017, June 13th, 2017. And she claimed the Feast of Trumpets was going to be 9/21/17, the beginning of the tribulation, 10/20/17. Well, that never happened. The beginning of the tribulation never happened in October 2017. The abomination of desolation is supposed to take place in this April, on the 2nd of April, day after April Fool's Day, interestingly. And the Day of Atonement is 2024, beginning of the millennium is that year as well. So it's unclear where she thinks the rapture is going to be, but I think she equates the Feast of Trumpets with the rapture. Definitely it has to be before the beginning of the tribulation in her system, because she's a pre-trib. So that means that we were supposed to have been raptured before October 2017. If the rapture actually happened, then she is not a believer, because she's still here. So either she's not a believer, which means she's definitely a false prophet, or it didn't happen and she's a false prophet. So either way that you look at it, she's a false prophet. Okay? So, okay. She's definitely a false teacher. Absolutely a false teacher. She belongs on both of our lists of false teachers and false prophets. So let me just see if I can find this one more thing I want to show you, and then we'll wind it up with her. Okay, so I found where she actually connects the Feast of Trumpets to the great sign, and then she says that that was a correction on her because she had thought that it was the rapture. Okay? So listen closely, because these people keep shifting like shifting sands. You can't depend on anything they say, because the next month they may say, oh, well, I thought that, but now it's this. Oh, I thought that, but now it's this. They are unreliable. They're like planets who wander around that you can't navigate your way home by. That's exactly what Jude calls them. That's the word that's used in Greek, planetai. It's the word for planets. It's referring to them as planets instead of stars. Stars are fixed. You can predict where they're going to be from night to night, season to season. That's how we mark out our seasons. That's what God gave them for in Genesis, was to mark out the seasons and the days and the months. So they're reliable. We can navigate our way home. But planets were not given for that reason. Planets were given as a deception, as a kind of thing to reveal the heart of the people who refused to follow the signs that God gave. And she is one of them. And you can tell these false prophets because they keep doing that. They're shifting everything all the time. Listen to what she says here. I hit the wrong pause button. Okay, here we go.
And God is going to give us the signal of when this starts. When, the gun goes off and now it's go. Right? So that was way back here in, I'm going to say, on the Feast of Trumpets in 2017. Followed immediately or in conjunction with the great sign of Revelation 12:1. Now, a lot of people think, and I thought at one time too, that the rapture was supposed to take place on that day. But what we didn't realize is this great sign is just the starting point. That just says that the 7 years has begun. And most people, if they're pre-tribbers, what they think is that it's the rapture that begins the 7 years. The rapture begins the process of Jesus becoming the king. But the rapture does not begin the 7 years. It's this event right here that starts the 7 years. There isn't a 7-year time period of the wrath of God. And that's why people think that that believers have to be caught up before the 7 years can start. But there is no scripture anywhere that says that there is wrath that's poured out for 7 years. There's things that happen, but they're not wrath. Revelation is very clear about what the wrath is. Okay. It's the sixth seal. Okay. It's the 7 bowls. It's the 7th trumpet. All of that is part of the day of the Lord or the wrath of God on our timeline. Daniel's timeline is for the Jews. Where the two timelines meet up is right here at the midpoint. Okay. When the abomination of desolation happens and when Satan is cast out of heaven. That's where the two timelines meet up. And then from here on out, we're on the same timeline. So these are the things that happen before the midpoint. This is the stuff that happens before the child is caught up. And the great sign is what happens before the sign of the dragon. So I believe that Revelation chapter 12 is telling us the story of what takes place at the beginning, very beginning of the 7 years. So you tell me what you think about.
All right, so you've heard that. I let it play much longer than I probably should have or would have normally. So there are a lot of things that she thinks which are incorrect. And I'm not going to get into all of them because that would be a study in Revelation. I simply want to reveal that she's a false prophet. And so she said the Feast of Trumpets already happened in 2017, a great sign in the heavens. And I'll show you what that great sign was according to her. She makes fatal mistakes in it. She shows the constellation Virgo, which is that's the Greek constellation of stars. They're the ones who put those stars together in their imagination and made it represent a virgin. Okay, and that's the woman that it says is in the sky with 12 stars on her head. So she counts 12 major stars above her head, and when there are 12 there, then it's the date, right? And she includes some planets. Well, planets, even by the ancients, were rejected as stars. They were known to be deceptive objects. They were not stars at all. So she really only has, I think, 9 stars over the head of this constellation. And the constellation is a Greek constellation of stars. It's not even a Hebrew constellation of stars. And so there are many problems with that, all right? Let's see if I can show you that picture so you can see for yourself. Okay, here it is. I've got some very surprising stuff for you to hear from her lips. Oh, gosh. She is so deceived. All right, let's go ahead. I don't know anyone who would not agree that she is deceived after you hear what she has to say. But let's go ahead and look at this first, right? Because I actually started in astrophysics. So I have a little something to say about this, but also I hold a degree in history, all right, and European history. Not only that, I also graduated seminary, and I was a linguist, professional linguist. That was my first profession, actually, was as a linguist in the military. I have a pretty extensive background that all comes together right here. All right. My first criticism about this that she is showing here to believers is that she's showing the constellations illustrated where this woman is showing her cleavage. Most of her breasts are exposed here. And this is lewd for a Christian teacher or prophet or whatever you want to call her to be displaying this in her diagram for teaching. It's beyond inappropriate. And this is supposed to be the woman who is the sign in the book of Revelation, the sacred writing of Revelation. And she shows this, a harlot. Now, this is supposed to be the sign of the woman. Understand, though, this is the Greeks' collection of stars. They're the ones who mapped out who connected the dots to kind of form the skeletal part of some person or thing or animal that fits into stories of their gods. Okay? These are stories of the Greek gods and heroes. That's what this is. You have Perseus, who's a warrior who frees Andromeda, who's tied to a rock, but that rock is also called Pegasus, which is the winged horse. It's all Greek mythology. And she's using this Greek mythology, which is a worship of other gods, in order to interpret Revelation. So one mark against her already is she's calling us to worship other gods. Now you might say, well, she's not calling us to worship them. Well, she's calling us to acknowledge them by using their devices. These are devices specifically to tell the story of their gods. Okay? So there's no question about that. That's established historical fact that that's what the constellations were created for. And now you see the illustration of the woman. This is supposed to be the virgin, Virgo, virgin. And it says so right here. Above her is Leo the lion. Okay? And don't think of Israel with that, or the Lion of Judah. It has nothing to do with the Bible or the Jews or any of the tribes of Israel. It has absolutely zero to do with that. This is Greek mythology about their gods and their heroes as well. So here she says this is the sign of the woman from Revelation, and when there are 12 stars above her head, that's the date. And so she says, oh, it happened on 23rd September 2017. It doesn't happen but once every 7,000 years. I guarantee that that's not true. All right, so here we've got Leo's stars, which are not all bright. Some of them you can barely even see sometimes with the naked eye. But then she throws in Venus, Mars, and Mercury to make 12. But those are not stars, neither by our standards nor by the ancient standards, Greek or Hebrew. Those were called planetae, where we get our word planets from, and it means wandering. It's a wandering thing. And it was a derogatory term, wandering, that you can't depend on it. You can't chart a course home by those. That was the word used in the Greek text for false teachers and false prophets. That's the word used to describe false teachers and false prophets. They are wandering stars for whom the blackest darkness is reserved, which is for her. The blackest darkness is reserved for her because she's a false teacher and a false prophet. And she's trying to include planetae, ironically, in with stars, in which stars you can calculate your way home. You can navigate your way home on. We're to shine like stars in the universe, holding out the hope of eternal life. Not like planetae, which you get lost. If you try to chart your course home by planets, you get lost. You cannot find your way home. And if you chart your course by her, you will get lost. You will not be saved. So, this is a farce. Not only a farce, it's deceptive to try to give authority to the representations of foreign gods. So she's already down one mark, is that she is steering you towards foreign gods. Let's have a look at what she has to say also about the Revelation, and you'll see she is deeply deceived. Okay, she's going to go into the thing about the sign of the dragon here in a minute, and I just want to look at her so-called cast of characters as she tries to trivialize this. Okay, it's not reverent at all when she does this. She makes it look like some sort of Hollywood play or something like, or New York play or something. Who knows? But it says the woman's the remnant of Israel. Okay, well, the woman does have to do with Israel because there are 12 stars on her head, and those represent the 12 tribes of Israel. That's true, right? But the question of who that woman is, that's the question, right? Who was the mother of the tribes of Israel? It was Rebekah, right? Isaac and Rebekah. Those were the parents of Jacob and Rachel. So actually the mother was Rachel. Okay. So this woman could be Rachel. Could represent Rachel, right? But it could also represent, what else? What other 12 do we have? We have the 12 apostles who are the foundations of the city of God. So who was the mother of the 12 apostles? Well, they weren't brothers in the physical sense, but Jesus called them. But who was the blessed woman among all women who gave birth to the Messiah? That's Mary. The church has traditionally seen the woman as Mary and representing the church, not Israel. So it could represent Israel, it could represent the church, but we have to hold it like that. We can't hold it like that. We have to hold it like that as we study. But as we study and we find, we have to call it something or another if we find out it is. The dragon clearly is Satan. There's no dispute about that anywhere. The child, she separates child and man-child out, and that's inappropriate because child is a generic term for child, whereas the term used that's man-child just indicates it's a male child. Okay? Just to indicate that it was male in those situations where it's used. It's the same thing. Child is child. It's not present-day believers versus Christ. No. And so that child has to go up to heaven in order to open the scroll. Right? Well, we'll see. She may be taking things out of context in different time frames. Michael, the archangel Michael, she interestingly just says that Michael is himself. He happens to be the only one here who is himself. Now, why would that be? Why would that be? No, she doesn't explain that. The martyrs are believers killed by the harlot. The brethren of the martyrs, 24 elders, the child. No. The flood, Satan's army, absolutely not. The waters do not represent Satan's army. The earth, the Mount of Olives, no. The woman's other offspring, believers during the reign of the beast, no. So let's go ahead and keep going. All right. So we're already seeing the cracks, that show that she's a false teacher. Let's keep going. I keep hitting the wrong pause button. Okay. Let's see if I can get my cursor over. There we go.
The kind of a movie that we're looking at, or a play, is going to you and me, believers, we're on the earth. Heavens.
I don't really want to hear her say those things. All right, here we go.
And places them on the earth.
Have a look.
So what happens next? Well, Satan takes.
So you can see here right now, known date, the start. September 21st to the 23rd, 2017, the first sign, the Feast of Trumpets. Revelation 12 sign in the starry heavens. That's that sign I showed you, which is a false sign. There are not 12 stars above the head of this false, this sign of foreign gods. So, no, absolutely not. So that right there tells you that she is a false prophet. Okay, let's keep going. Yeah, you're right. You see that. I'm sure, alien disclosure. That literally means aliens, like from outer space. I'm not joking.
His tail, and he casts a third of his stars to the earth. And I believe that that's kind of an alien thing. The space brothers coming from the stars, and they're going to show up after the Revelation 12 sign happens. So we have a starting date for all the events that take place in Revelation 12. The next thing that happens is the woman is going to be in travail.
All right, so let's talk about that alien disclosure. She says that the dragon is going to sweep a third of the stars out of the sky after the sign of the trumpets. But the whole story about how the dragon was cast down to the earth is about that has already happened. And he took a third of the angels with him from heaven. She's talking as if he only took a third of his own angels who are in heaven, like the dragon has his own angels in heaven separate from God's angels. And he swept a third of them out of the sky, which means against their will. But no, what happened was that he rebelled against God. He convinced a third of the angels to rebel against God with him. They fought against Michael, and Michael fought back and won and cast the devil and his angels down to the earth, and they're roaming the earth seeking to devour us. In particular, they're demons. Demons used to be angels. They're fallen angels. So she's completely off her rocker here. That she thinks it's going to be aliens even. She just said, earlier she says these stars are angels. And now she's saying that they're aliens. It's going to be some alien disclosure. Okay? And the thing is that the midpoint comes this April,
She may be going to travail.
And if it comes this April and all this stuff is supposed to have happened, where is this alien disclosure? Where is that? Where's the war in Israel? Where's the resurrection? Where's the rapture? All of this stuff has to happen before April. And we've already had 2 years of nothingness. So she's clearly a false prophet.
Satan cast the stars down. We don't know. It could be after or during or at the same time. In any case, the woman, Israel, will be involved in a war, which is what travail means in the Old Testament. That's the symbol for...
Travail does not mean war. Travail means work or effort or struggle at most. That's where the French comes from. So no, travail is like a struggle or hard work. It's much like the Greek word that we translate deeds, works, or action. So it's work of toiling. It doesn't mean war. She should not be listened to about her translations. She has no idea how to translate. She's just fabricating it however she wants to, metaphorically, symbolically, but absolutely not literally.
A conflict, a war, that's very, very bad. The dragon positions himself in front of the woman. He is not wanting to devour the woman.
Okay, I don't want to listen to this. Let me get you to a significant point, because her babble is driving me nuts. Okay, so now we're almost to the midpoint. I'll just play it now.
The child is caught up to God and to his throne.
All right, so you see here, rapture of believers happens just before the midpoint, which means it should happen now. Well, actually, this is 2021. We still have another year, all right, in which it could happen. So if she has some leeway to play with, she can say, well, all these things are going to happen all at once. Because she's already said that these aren't necessarily in order right here, and some of them can happen simultaneously. She can always fall back on saying, well, there's just nothing happening until the very end of that period. But that's not possible. Because all of these things take time to happen, like giving the birth of a child, right? The birth of a child. Well, the birth of a child means that the woman has to be pregnant with the child 9 months. And if you want to take that metaphor that way, fine. And where's the war in Israel? The war's not just going to last one day. That's not a war. That's maybe a skirmish. A war doesn't last just one day. So, war lasts years. And we only have a little over a year left. And there's no war in Israel. You can't call it a war, the things happening there. There's terrorism going on and retaliation, but there's no war. So there's no war in Israel. She's a false prophet. And she's fabricating all these things that do not make sense from Revelation. Even just her interpretation makes no sense at all with what's actually written. So she's a false teacher and a false prophet. I think I've proven that already. So I really can't stand listening to her dribble on, of all this garbage, and just making God look bad. It makes me angry. I can't stand it. These people, God has something very special arranged for them. And it says the blackest of darkness is reserved. I'm going to pull that up for you. Here's Xiphus, and it's got, that's the program that I use, and it's got Jude up here, the book of Jude. I just want to read the beginning part and then jump to the relevant verse in verse 13. So it says, Jude, the servant of Jesus Christ and brother of James, to them that are sanctified by God the Father and preserved in Jesus Christ and called. Okay? So first off, you notice that who are sanctified by God the Father. The Protestants believe that you're first... you're justified, then you're sanctified, then you're glorified. All right? To them that are sanctified, already sanctified, not being sanctified, are sanctified by God the Father. Okay? So this kind of blows the lid off of that, right? So I've looked up the verb, and the verb actually means is perfect passive participle. It's completed. It's completed, having been made holy, sanctified is the translation in the King James. Having been made holy, having been sanctified, having been, it's completed. It's perfect passive participle. Okay? So this is a completed action already. It says to them that are sanctified. It should say to them that have been sanctified by God the Father. But the King James wanted to soften it without completely looking like they're, trying to cover something up. But they do this quite often, where they're trying to soften something that directly opposes their doctrine that's fabricated by men. And so this actually directly opposes their doctrine of men that were behind the King James translators. To them that have been sanctified by God the Father and preserved in Jesus Christ and called. So that's just a side note so you understand that we're talking about false teachers. Mercy unto you and peace and love be multiplied. Beloved, when I gave all diligence to write unto you of the common salvation, it was needful for me to write unto you and exhort you that ye should earnestly contend for the faith which was once delivered unto the saints, the terrifyingly clean ones, those who have been made terrifyingly clean, sanctified, the sanctified ones. The faith which was once delivered unto the sanctified ones. For there are certain men crept in unawares, who were before of old ordained to this condemnation, ungodly men. It means irreverent men. That's what that word means. Remember I told you. Irreverent men. Turning the grace of our God into lasciviousness. What is this word lasciviousness? Let's find out what this is that word that means incontinence. Okay? It's right here. Which means without. That's a negative particle, and the presumed selgus. Okay? It means continent. Right? Continent. Like able to control yourself. Just like you think of with older people where they're incontinent. They can't control their peeing and things of the sort. They leak in their pants. So that's incontinent. The same is true here, is that they can't control their sinfulness. It just does it itself. It takes control of their body and just does it. And they have no control. They have no discipline. They have no exercise and control over their body and their flesh and their lust. And so that's what this is. So who turned the grace of our God, turning the grace of our God into incontinence, the lack of self-control of sin and lust, and denying the only Lord God and our Lord Jesus Christ. I will therefore put you in remembrance, though you once knew this, how that the Lord, and he goes into all these things, right? And he's talking about these false teachers. 13. Raging waves of the sea, foaming out their own shame, wandering stars. That's the word. to whom is reserved the blackness of darkness forever. Forever. Irrevocable. Not just darkness, this is the blackness of darkness forever. Let's look at that word. Here it is right there. I recognize it immediately. Planetis. Okay, planetai in the text, that's the form I'm always referring to. This is the plural form. Planetai. It's from 4108. It means roving, like a tramp, like someone without a home. Roving. Planet. Okay? So this is a word that's used as a metaphor for these men, but also quite literally because it comes from the word planos, meaning roving. Okay? So they are rovers without a home. And if you follow them, you cannot find your way home. You go down alleyways and streets and fields and you end up not having any idea where you are. That's the concept. And that was the name for the planets in the sky. Because they were that way as stars. They had no home, no fixed position with respect to everything else. They wandered down alleyways and fields and everywhere else. And if you tried to follow them to get home, you'd get lost. And you'd have no idea where you were. And that's for whom the blackest darkness is reserved. And that's what she is. That's what she's doing. She's trying to lead you every which way. And then she'll change it, 6 months later, she'll change something in it. Then 6 months later, she'll change something else in it. And everything keeps shifting. There's no way to know where you are if you keep following her. She's a false prophet. She's predicted dates that haven't come to happen. Okay, she even said that she thought that the 2017 date was the rapture. So I just want to remind you, before I end this, I want to show you this again so that you can see these dates. Remember, this is her website, Brenda Weltner. This is published in 2017, June 13th. So this is before what she thought the Feast of the Trumpets were. And she says the tribulation was supposed to begin in October 2017, and it has not begun. None of those things have happened. None of them. Zero. It's been 2 years, more than 2 years now, 2 years and 2 months, and nothing has happened. She is a false prophet. Now, I'm going to tell you again, as I do with every one of these false prophets that I point you to and say this is a false prophet. In the test by Moses, he gives commands by God to us that we are to not hearken unto the false prophet or the dreamer of dreams, who's a false prophet. We are to absolutely stop listening or paying attention to them or even thinking that they exist. They do not belong anymore on the face of the earth because they were stoned back then. They were killed, executed, put out of the population completely. And he did say, do not hearken unto them. And so today we still have to say, do not hearken unto them. Do not listen to them. Do not go chasing after them. Do not go listening to their videos. Do not go studying their system. Do not. Because then you're guilty of their sin. You are guilty of their sin if you go chasing after this after hearing that they are a false prophet. Then you are guilty of their sin. Do not do it. That's the reason for these videos. It's not for entertainment. This is absolutely not entertainment. This is dead serious, life or death situation. I'm trying to save you from eternal damnation by pointing out the false prophets so you don't end up getting lost. That is the only reason I'm doing this. That's for you. So you need to then obey the Lord and stay out of it. And just listen to those teachers and prophets who are true. And may the Lord bless you as you seek Him with all your heart. Remember to subscribe down below and like the video and share it on your Facebook and other social media. And then make a comment, whether a question or a comment. We read all of them and we try to respond to all. Head on over to our website, The Rooted Word, and start reading the translation and also the articles we've posted. It's at therootedword.com, therootedword.com. And may the Lord bless you as you seek Him with all your heart.